For the reading this evening, we'll continue to get a feel for the teachings of Ajahn Liem, and we'll do a couple of these readings, see how long the first one takes. And the first reading will be more from the Ways of the Peaceful, it'll be a talk given during a Summit era novice ordination at Wat Papong, I believe in 2003. And then if there's enough time, then I wanted to read something that Ajahn Liem wrote for a Buddhist conference in Australia. So this talk is called Ordination, Going Forth. And some background to this talk. Going forth is the translation of the Pali term papaja that is used for the samanera or novice ordination. It means to go forth from the household life to the life of a samana, a contemplative. This teaching was given by Ajahn Liem during a ceremony of going forth of Western monks at Wat Nong Papong on February 19th, 2003. So far in this ordination ceremony, you have prepared these sets of yellow robes, sewn and dyed them according to the most excellent allowances of the Buddha, and uttered the words requesting the going forth. This is already something very wholesome. The next step, the going forth, requires that you plant and cultivate faith and inspiration within the field of the Triple Gem. The Buddha, the founder of this religion, has allowed the going forth only if one initially studies and knows what the qualities of the Lord Buddha actually are. The Buddha's virtues are as follows. He possesses wisdom, sharpness of mind and discernment, applying it to those things that ought to be known and seen, knowing their advantages and disadvantages, and whether they are beneficial or not, all the way to each of the Four Noble Truths, and he has done so without anyone teaching him. This aspect points to the Buddha's quality of wisdom. The Buddha has left behind all unwholesome states of mind, the defilements and desires, the habits and modes of being that have been incited by these defilements over a vast stretch of time. He possesses the most excellent traits of character and is composed of qualities of Dhamma that are essential. This aspect of the Buddha's is the Buddha's quality of purity. The Buddha is endowed with loving kindness and compassion for the crowd of beings heated up by the fires of defilement and dukkha. He advises and teaches so that these beings, having listened, may follow and practice after him for the complete extinguishing of the fires of dukkha, and he does so regardless of the troubles, hardships, and difficulties arising for him. This aspect is the Buddha's quality of great compassion. So that's wisdom, purity, and compassion, the Buddha gunas, or the quality of the Buddha. The noble being that dwells in these three qualities is called Buddha, the one who knows well and perfectly. When, knowing well and perfectly in this way, a Buddha points out and teaches, these doctrines and teachings are called the Dhamma. Further, those people that have heard the Dhamma and behave and practice accordingly, following its disciplinary code, the Vinaya, they are called Sangha. The Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha are the three objects that we are giving the highest importance to. When we feel that we truly respect the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, it is appropriate to receive the going forth. Now I will tell you the basic meditation objects as a means for you to train for liberation from the defilements. They are given in Pali just in the same way as the teachers of old have been passing them down for many generations. Please repeat after me. Kesa, Loma, Naka, Danta, Tacho, Tacho, Danta, Naka, Loma, Kesa. That's hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin in forward and reverse order that gets recited during the novice ordination. These meditation objects the Buddha called the root meditation objects. They provide a way for our mind to experience the fading away of the cravings and desires that stain our minds. It is normal that the ordinary, unenlightened being understands the experience of desires in a personal way. The Buddha wanted us to see desires as non-self, as non-personal, and to realize that there is no being there, just the existence of elements, material form that behaves according to the laws of nature and relies on its environment being in balance. then things can come into being. Yet this doesn't mean that they are stable. They exist in such a way that there is change and alteration all the time. They are not in a condition that permanently stays the same. There needs to be a rising, existing, and ceasing. This way of being is what we call existence, according to the laws of nature. Investigating these root meditation objects leads us to seeing instability, non-sustainability, and non-self, a way of being that arises, exists, and ceases. This weakens our desires, our grasping onto and giving importance to the self. When the assumption of a self is weakened, our mental reactions that come from having to interact with other people in the world will also be weakened, regardless of the kind of situation that we are in. If it is one where we are accepted and receive praise, we won't feel happy about it, and if it is a situation where we are blamed, we won't feel hurt. Not having feelings of either liking or disliking will allow us to understand ourselves better. Liking and disliking are what is called worldly Dhammas, the qualities that rule over those people who still have dust in their eyes, the average unenlightened beings that are still immature. Worldly people will see these mind states as something worth wishing for, but as we are practitioners who aspire to lessen the desires staining our minds, we reflect on seeing such states of mind as merely an experience of feelings that arise, stay for a while, and then cease, both pleasant and unpleasant feelings. The Buddha called happiness somanasa, which is considered a mode of sukha vedana, and sadness domanasa, which is a mode of dukkha vedana. Dukkha and sukha are expressions of reality that cause emotions to arise. The Buddha taught us to focus our minds on them and know any feeling as being simply a feeling. The emotions of liking or disliking we know as simply feelings. There is nothing that could be firmly established and enduring, lasting or permanent. All these are just states of mind that, after having arisen, will naturally have to cease. By understanding our experiences like this, we won't get lost thinking, this is good or this is bad. These kinds of thoughts are just attributes of delusion and wrong view, nothing else. So the Buddha taught us to focus and reflect on seeing them as a phenomenon of the mind, being born, existing, and passing away. There's no need for one to be a slave of these processes, a slave of the world, or a slave of the defilements of pleasant and unpleasant feelings. One should see that these processes always imply a feeling that something is lacking. They are of the kind that one can say is never full, that doesn't know the point where there's enough, just like a flame can never get enough fuel. Focusing on these processes as simply arising, existing, and passing away, we are able to turn ourselves away from them. We can get out of the situation, not becoming slaves of desires or tanha, craving. Generally, tanha is a feeling that is coupled with dukkha, a feeling that is difficult to bear with, a feeling of non-freedom. We need to investigate these feelings, and this will bring us to experience peace of mind, peace from pleasant and unpleasant feeling. We can live like samanas, then, like peaceful ones. Let us take these meditation objects and develop them, apply them and bring them to life, so that we know this world. Knowing the world, we know this reality and what our human birth is about. Being a true human being means being somebody who possesses a mind that goes beyond the nature of the world. Let us take this as our attitude in meditation, helping ourselves work toward freedom from the power of delusion, wrong view, and unwholesome mind states, so that we can attain a state of mind that is pure and clean, see the usefulness of our being born as a human being and the practice of Dhamma, and experience how beneficial it is to relate to ourselves in the correct and appropriate way. Now I will hand the yellow robes to you for you to go and put on. Then you can come in again and take the precepts, so that the ceremony of going forth will be complete. Come here, Longpo says in English. So they go out and put their robes on. After the postulants have put on the yellow robes and taken the 10 precepts of a novice, the talk continues. From now on, being novices, it is your duty to correct and develop yourselves. You need to constantly recollect that now you belong to a different group than the householders and the common people in the world. Here we are leading our lives in order to see the danger and disadvantages of samsara, the round of death and rebirth. It is our obligation to make the qualities of a samana arise in us, being somebody whose ways of life are peaceful. We develop peaceful bodily conduct. Our body, each and every part of it, should not be used in the manner of a fool. Our conduct needs to be that of a wise man. That means to have humility, an attitude of respect, and to live in a subordinate way, not getting carried away with our sense of self. One can say, guarding one's body. Likewise, our speech also needs to be guarded, as it can be the source of all kinds of good and bad things. We need to know how to use speech in a good way. If our speech is grounded in humility, it won't get us in trouble. In our practice, we need to keep observing ourselves for the sake of protection in every form, both in our bodily and verbal conduct, applying mindfulness and keeping ourselves within the standards of the monastic training. In this way, we won't get into confusion or low and vulgar mind states. Low-mindedness is a trait of worldly beings that are capable of doing all kinds of bad things or behave in degenerate ways. They are following the ways of the unwholesome, anger, desire, and delusion. Our becoming samanas should gradually give rise to changes in a good direction. Having taken up the training, we will have to practice the lifestyle of the one who sees how life can be beneficial. We will have to give great attention to ourselves, developing the qualities of honesty and straightforwardness in our minds. We should maintain good ethical conduct and possess a sense of shame toward doing bad. When one possesses a sense of shame toward bad actions, one will also show a sense of fear and be cautious. That's hiri ottappa. Because one sees that bad deeds won't lead to freedom. These are some things to keep in mind when we start training ourselves. We follow the intention to keep sila and develop purity of heart. Sila, in fact, means purity. It is the intention of loving kindness and friendliness, or the intention to respect the rights of other people, being considerate in whatever one does. We should start relating to our environment in a way that examines and investigates it, for the sake of seeking the Satchadhamma, the truth of reality. These are some things that you need to develop an understanding of and educate yourselves in. Another aspect is how we use our faculties for communicating and relating to the world. We have got eyes, ears, a nose, a tongue, a sense of touch, and a mind. Having eyes, we need to know how to guard them. These eyes we have can give rise to both good and evil. The same is true for the ears, and so on. If there is both good and evil, we need the skills to differentiate and choose what is good. For example, if the eye sees something that causes feelings of getting carried away by emotions or sensual desire, we need to know how to control ourselves. If this happens, we need to use meditation techniques, such as investigating the body. Or we contemplate our feelings in relation to the two faces of the worldly Dhammas, those wished for and unwished for phenomenon. We see them as things that simply arise and cease. They are merely temporary states of existence, and the qualities of stability and durability cannot be found in them. This is why the Buddha warns us to be cautious and restrained whenever the eye sees a form, the ear hears a sound, the nose smells an odor, the tongue tastes a flavor, the body senses something touching it, or there are thoughts arising in the mind. He advises us to have mindfulness and not be careless, not allowing experiences to come up that we didn't filter wisely. This is another aspect in which you will have to train in samanas. You constantly need to be filtering. In our training, there is the topic of how to relate to the requisites of a monk: robes, food, dwelling, and medicines, and the necessities of life. Following the example of the enlightened beings, we live as somebody who is content and has few wishes. We walk the safe path of those who dwell in states of mind that are beyond the world. The way to practice with regards to our requisites is by knowing what is enough. If we get a little, that's enough. If we get a lot, that's enough. Even if we don't get anything at all, that's enough. We train to become somebody who always has enough. That means somebody who is happy with whatever comes. In this way, our monastic life will be free from worries about these things. We have all the opportunity to continue with our studies without obstructions, educating and observing ourselves further, supported simply by peace and seclusion. We rely on all the opportunities given to us in this lifestyle. We really don't have to bother about anything else. Even concerning the world and society, we don't have to worry. We aren't living in conflict with anybody. We are living for the sake of creating benefits for ourselves and others. When we are not in conflict with others, qualities arise in us that others find acceptable. This is our task. You will always need to put forth effort in this practice. It is the quality of diligence that will enable us to experience perfection in ourselves. Perfection means to be completely mature, ready, and prepared. Complete preparedness means that there are no longer any problems. This is the case with somebody whose mind is fully enlightened and awake, somebody who has already passed their shining night of prosperity, where there is no more darkness, there are no more feelings of being oppressed and irritated. A state of being at ease permeates one's mind, and in one's heart one feels fresh and cool. We need to apply ourselves diligently to our tasks. This is called practice. We strive to make the most of our lives. Our lives are really very short, and a chance like this is truly rare. We don't have all that much time. The Buddha compared us to dewdrops being dried out by the sun, or to cattle being led to the slaughter. It is really like this. Time keeps passing, but it doesn't just merely pass. The facts that our bodily form keeps deteriorating makes itself known with every passing moment. It is possible that the hair on top of our heads starts falling out, or our teeth that had once been strong start to become loose. Our eyesight that used to be clear and bright may become feeble, and our ears that once had been able to hear well and clearly may not even be able to locate where the sounds are coming from anymore. Sometimes a noise comes from the north, but we turn our head to the south. We start to make more and more mistakes. As life passes, our behavior undergoes changes, so we need to understand these processes of life. We have to be aware that time passes and see the value of inclining ourselves toward pure and peaceful states of mind, unconfused, and with a heart at ease. Living without confusion is all we need for being at ease. We can't be well when there is chaos. When the powers of defilements and desires are burning us, we become heated up and can't find peace. We are taken by force to become slaves of our desires. We think that this thing is good or that thing is better or the best and will bring us some happiness. There is no end in sight. The Buddha taught us to see the danger in thinking this way. Don't get bound up with taking desires as something positive. They are poison. If we swallow such a substance, it will harm us and we won't feel well. We'll be in deep trouble and get all frantic, being burned alive by dukkha. Following our desires will bring about our downfall instead of giving us the chance to experience the Supreme. We sink into an inferior position, into disastrous situations. This is the opposite of the path of progress in our development. It isn't good. Now that you have the opportunity, bring up the motivation for training continually. Walk on the path that the Buddha pointed out. This path is what is meant by right practice. Within the Buddha's path lies full perfection, the training in sila, the training of the mind, and the training of wisdom. Don't lead your life like they do out in the world. Their lives keep following the stream of delusion. If pleasant feelings arise, they are happy about it. If unpleasant feelings arise, they become sad. They eagerly pursue the pleasant feelings and hate the unpleasant ones, and try to do away with them. This seems unworthy. Just think about it. We human beings shouldn't get lost in our delusions to such an extent. We should know better, then things will be to our advantage. So be determined and motivated, all of you, to take up these duties in the name of being a samana. Do this as if your monastic life was a chedi, a place of reverence and devotion that is worthy of worship and respect. Keep on fulfilling your duties in this way. Taking this opportunity to fulfill our obligations, we become an example and a guide for others, somebody who brings benefit and qualities useful for future times. So let all of us be motivated and determined in our hearts and minds. May every one of us fulfill these duties of a samana in a complete and perfect way. That's that talk to the new novices. That's actually the group of novices he ordained at that time. I was at their bhikkhu ordination when I went to Thailand in 2005, or at least one of them was a group of 5 that ordained as bhikkhus. I remember I was in Thailand for 1 week, and then there was this bhikkhu ordination. I think rather than read this second reading, I'll just leave it there and open it up for questions, if that brought up anything for anybody.
I'm curious about people that you've seen live the holy life in monastic form and lay form, and just what qualities have been strong in them.
In order to sustain it, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, that question gets answered in various ways by various different ajahns. I know somebody asked Longpa Pasano that question, and I remember his answer was, and I would agree largely with this, it's actually a kind of a stubbornness, kind of a sense of not just not giving up, but it's where stubbornness can actually be used to our advantage. Where usually stubbornness, we would say, oh, they're so stubborn. But stubborn in the way of not listening to those voices that are telling us to leave or to give up, and just stubbornly kind of sticking with it. And I also remember another answer that was given by a Chan master who visited us, and it was in 2014, and as a very old monk who is a direct disciple of Master Shu Yun and visited here. And we did a Q&A session with him, and actually, just like Ajahn Liem was saying in the talk, the ears don't work so well, so he was almost deaf, and his interpreter, whenever we asked a question, they had to yell it into his ear, like with their mouth right at his ear and yelling for him to hear, and then he would answer. So I remember Ajahn Tita Panyo asked, what are the qualities which would help samanas or monks to sustain themselves long term? And he said, Sila Samadhi Panya. So I thought that was a very good answer. And for myself, I would think that not taking refuge in anything other than Dhamma, I think, is a long-term, if you want to make a long-term commitment to practice, because we get asked this question, as a senior monk, how do you sustain yourself? And sometimes, do you have to find a hobby or something so you don't get bored, or develop some sort of craft so you kind of have something to do with yourself? You're not just sitting twiddling your thumbs. But I think all those things can be done by senior monks, like Lumpur Virdamo, he's got his weaving that he does, and he really enjoys doing that. Or I have some woodworking abilities, and I enjoy doing that, but that's not, I would be very clear for myself that that's not the refuge. That's something that just arises and passes away. So the refuge in Dhamma is really, really important and crucial for long-term commitment, I think, and in nothing other than that. So if we're relying on some hobby or external thing, then that's just unsustainable. That's another thing we're going to have to let go of when we eventually not even pass away, but just get old and we can't do it anymore. And how much are we going to suffer when we can't do the things we like to do? So the the refuge in Dhamma has to be the refuge. So I think that's something I keep coming back to, is for a long-term commitment or for a sustainable commitment, then refuge in Dhamma, or you could say refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and that's the one reliable refuge. And I remember I listened to a talk by Longpa Ban one time, and he was, it's usually a praiseworthy practice to get into these craft practices, like the monks will crochet bowl covers, or even in Thailand they make bowl stands. It's a very intricate woodworking thing. It can take up to a month to make one, and it can develop a strong sense of focus and actually be a very good skill to develop. But then Longpa Ban saw that a lot of the monks were making bowl stands, which is normally a praiseworthy thing. But he said, "Be careful. Is the Buddha in the bowl stand?" He said, "Is the Buddha in the mind?" So not really get too intoxicated with anything on the outside, but to always be coming back to that true refuge on the inside, the one reliable thing that we have. Like we can't always be healthy. Also, like refuge in the body, we can't always be healthy. We can't always be comfortable. This is just a part of life, and we learn that. Sometimes we learn that the hard way. Actually, probably all of us will learn it the hard way eventually. This is in Thai. The word is laktam. So when you develop a Dhamma principle, that your life is guided by lak is principle. So laktam is what they talk about a lot, or silatam, using the principle of purity in order to have a sense of Dhamma, a Dhamma compass or Dhamma guidance in our lives. It's important. And I think it's good to read these types of talks from time to time as well, because it gives the lay people kind of insight into the ways Longpa might speak to these candidates that'll have a bit of a different quality than, say, if he's giving a talk to a group of lay people who have just given the Nil Dana. So he's talking to these novice candidates in terms of really trying to get to that point of developing that Dhamma principle in their lives. I think another thing that's worth thinking about is, in terms of developing that Dhamma principle, is one teaching that I really appreciate in the suttas is the Buddha talking about his own path as a bodhisattva, letting go of the three intoxications. And that's the intoxication with youth, the intoxication with health, and the intoxication with life. And that when he contemplated old age, the intoxication with youth left him. When he contemplated sickness, the intoxication with health left him. And when he contemplated the reality of death, the intoxication with life left him. So we can always check with ourselves, what level, how to what extent do we have those three intoxications, and how are those guiding our lives as well. I think it's also important to, in terms of making things sustainable, is to also we might hear these teachings and think like, oh no, I'm never going to be able to do this. And, the mind can't control the mind. It's got all sorts of defilements. So the other part of this, and which you'll hear in other talks by Longpa Liem, is having to be very, very forgiving with ourselves, because what we can take delight in actually is that many of these things coming up in the mind, we aren't acting on them. So if a thought of anger comes up, usually, for the most part, we aren't acting on it. And if a thought of strong desire comes up, usually for the most part, we aren't acting on it. And, we might have a few terse words here and there, but that's about the extent of it. But say if I have rage come up toward Rick, for example, like I want to throttle him, but I'm not going to act on that. But I actually don't want to do that. But it's just an example. It's like he's doing it again. So, or just the kind of, those types of thoughts have been there all the time, but we're seeing them more clearly in the space of the practice, the space of the monastery. So it can be scary. It can be very scary to see these things, and embarrassing, scary, and it's just natural that the mind has all sorts of thoughts and desires and emotions, and so it's learning how to see them and be able to discern what's worth following and what's not worth following. And that's a big part of the practice. That's almost all of the practice, I would think. So another way to sustain ourselves is to be very forgiving with ourselves and know that it does take time. The mind doesn't get trained easily. It's very, it's like it really is like I was talking about monkeys last night. It really is like a monkey. It's just kind of baring its fangs and it's jumping around. So, but then just to, really not give into its demands is important. And we'll see this over and over again too as a theme in the teachings of the Kruba Ajahns. It's a word they use in Thai, two words which sometimes gets translated as likes and dislikes. Sometimes it gets translated as the attractive and unattractive things in the world, and that's ita rom, anita rom. And that comes from the Pali ita ramana and anita ramana, and that refers to the different types of the worldly winds. There's 4 worldly winds that are positive and 4 that are negative. So the worldly winds being gain and loss, praise and criticism, status and loss of status, pleasure and pain. And then, so the positive side of those are called ita ramana, or that which is wished for, that which is liked, that which is wished for. And then the negative side of those 8 is the anita ramana, which is not wished for, that which is not desired. And so you can distill those 8 worldly winds into ita ramana, anita ramana, or that which is desired, that which is wished for, that which is not desired, that which is not wished for. And watching the mind really being repelled by all the things that are unwished for and being attracted to all the things that are wished for, but then always coming up against dukkha because of that.